Greetings, my friends! The following review may contain spoilers for Iron Man 3, so if you haven't seen it yet, bugger off! Hi everyone, welcome back to Comic Book Issues. I'm your host, the Last Angry Geek, and it's time for another one of our movie vlogs. I just saw Iron Man 3, so I thought we'd take a few minutes to talk about it. First off, I liked it. I liked it better than the second one, but not as much as the first one. You know, there's something very powerful about origin stories, so you're never really going to do better than the first movie in a superhero franchise, the Nolan Batman movies being the obvious exception. But it was better than the second one, definitely. Tony Stark, they gave him post-traumatic stress disorder after the Avengers, and I can understand that. I mean, he did almost die until the Hulk yelled him back to life. It's not really dealt with in any conclusive way in this story. He just kind of has it, and then by the end it's gone. His way of dealing with it is to build armor in his basement. He builds up to like 40 new suits, and then by the time the movie is over, it's done. He's better, and it's never really explained why, and I thought that was kind of a cheap way of dealing with a serious problem a lot of people have when they come back from traumatic experiences. And the ending was very ambiguous, you know? You didn't really understand, was he done as Iron Man? He blows up all his armor. He'll be back for Avengers 2, I'm sure. They'll give Downey enough money that he shows up again. But it was kind of an ambiguous ending, you know? Acting-wise, let's talk about the actors. Robert Downey Jr. did a great job, as always. Tony Stark's story was a little muddled, but again, Robert Downey Jr. is the reason to go see these films. He's got that razor-sharp wit. He's as funny as ever. It's a great performance. He's great for that character. Again, the post-traumatic stress disorder kind of rang a little false for Tony Stark, because he's the guy, it's always water off his back. He's the guy who doesn't take things too seriously, you know? I could almost see Captain America getting PTSD if he wasn't the ultimate soldier, but, you know, not Iron Man. I mean, he's the guy who just has a drink and forgets about it. But, again, the character wasn't written great, but the performance was, you know, A+ as always. Gwyneth Paltrow was very good. They got to do more with her instead of just, oh, Tony, I'm so worried for you. You know, she got to wear the armor for a little bit. She got injected with the weird-ass virus that was mutating people. I mean, she got to be put into the damsel in distress situation. What's it say about a movie when being the damsel in distress is a step up from what you've done in previous films? Here, she's actually put in danger. She actually got to do some stunts. She got to wear the armor at one point. So there were a lot of cool things for Gwyneth to do, and she still got to advance the relationship with Tony and have, you know, the serious moments, as well as some funny moments, and then, again, got to do a lot of action stuff, so I'm sure that was a lot of fun for her. Maybe not. Maybe those harnesses can be a pain in the ass when you have to wear them for stunts. As for the villains, Guy Pearce's villain was kind of just this vague, you know, businessman character, very kind of similar to what Sam Rockwell played in Iron Man 2. I might be getting his name wrong, but not as flamboyant, not as a businessman. Obviously, he's more a scientist. He's the evil Tony Stark, you know. He was a little vague and generic. I thought he was good enough as a villain. The big problem with Iron Man 2, I thought, was they had too many villains, and they tried to make Whiplash into Crimson Dynamo instead of just keeping him Whiplash. The Mandarin. Ben Kingsley. This is the thing that's pissing so many people off. I had no problem with it. I am not a huge Iron Man fan. I mostly know him through the Avengers comics. I rarely read the Iron Man comic. Iron Man has kind of a weak rogues gallery. It's mostly just other dudes in armor, except for the Mandarin with his 10 magic rings. I mean, the only time I ever really read the Mandarin was when they crossed over into Uncanny X-Men and they remade Psylocke into a purple-haired Asian woman. She was the Lady Mandarin in Acts of Vengeance. I'm not a huge Iron Man fan, so a lot of the changes they made for this story didn't bother me as much as it did some of the purists. But I had no problem with what they did. I thought it was a nice fake-out. We learned the Mandarin isn't who we think he is. As soon as he came into Guy Pearce's character's offices, I want to say Kildare was his name, I knew that there was something going on with those two, that it was probably, you know, he was the power behind the power. Ben Kingsley did a good performance for what the character was, and I really enjoyed it. You know, the purists are pissed off because finally the Mandarin, Iron Man's arch enemy, is in this, and they get the rug pulled out from under them, but that's what was good about the movie. It messed with your expectations. You were expecting one thing and then you get another, and I like surprises like that in a movie. I like when I don't know what's going to happen going in, or when what I think is going to happen suddenly isn't right. That's when a movie's fun, when it defies what I'm expecting, when it surprises me. And I'll give a shout out to Jon Favreau. He came back. He could have just had his character written off. Happy isn't a terribly important character. I mean, he just basically gave himself a cameo in the first two films so he could be in a Marvel movie because he's a big superhero fan. But to come back and be a cast member in the movie where you'd previously been the director, he was still an executive producer on this film. But I thought it took guts to kind of come back and take a much smaller part in a franchise where you were previously much more important. So even though he was only in like the first part of the movie and then the very end, that was cool of Favreau to come back and keep the character going for whatever it was worth. I loved his hair in the flashback. He looked like a bad John Travolta from Pulp Fiction. The supporting cast was pretty good. There was that little kid, and that kid could have been very annoying. He and Tony had such a great chemistry together. Robert Downey Jr. just treats this kid horribly, and it was so funny when he did it. Like the first line was like, when he says his dad ran off, and Downey goes, "Yeah, father's run off. No need to be a pussy about it." And everyone in the audience, there was kind of like, oh, no, he didn't. The character could have been a cliche, could have been overly precocious. In fact, he pretended to be overly precocious when Tony leaves him in the town. But it never got to that point, and I never found myself resenting the kid. It came close once or twice, but for the most part, the kid worked. And this was a very funny movie. It wasn't just Robert Downey Jr. being funny. They had a lot of funny other characters, mostly in supporting roles, like the kid. I want to give a shout out to Adam Paley. He's on this show I love called Happy Endings. It's a sitcom, but he had just one scene where he's like, "I'm your number one fan, Mr. Stark." He was just played this scene opposite Robert Downey Jr. They were just riffing off one another, and it was hilarious. So they had some good, funny supporting cast members to play off Robert Downey Jr., and I think that was smart. Don't let him handle all the humor. Give it, spread it around. They thought outside the box, and I liked that. I liked that he loses the armor in about the first third and gets it back at the very end. I like that he and Don Cheadle are arguing over the name. It's a War Machine. No, it's Iron Patriot. It tested better, I mostly like the middle part when he's in the little town looking into the first explosions, and it's kind of like Tony Stark's steampunk adventurer. I could have watched a whole movie of that with him just with the hand-built Iron Man weaponry from the hardware store. The shock glove, the nail gun that shoots tranquilizer darts. That was great. I want a whole movie of him just with rigged-up gadgets fighting crime that way. That was a lot of fun. Don Cheadle, again, let me get back to him. I don't like Don Cheadle in this role. He's an amazing actor. I've seen him do some great stuff, but I'm not a fan of his Rhodey. Honestly, Terrence Howard from the first one is still Rhodey in my eyes. He did a great job with that part. Don Cheadle's too intense, too serious for this, and I don't really buy him when he's trying to be lighthearted and humorous. So take that for what it's worth. So that's the cast. That's the story, the controversies. The ending, the post-credits little sequence at the end. Great cameo. I loved it. I love that it's continuing that relationship from Avengers. That was a lot of fun. That was a great little cameo at the end. I was a little surprised. No S.H.I.E.L.D. in this one. After being such a fixture in the first two Iron Man movies, no S.H.I.E.L.D. No Agent Coulson, obviously. No Nick Fury. No mention of S.H.I.E.L.D. No agents showing up to help out. I was a little surprised by that, and it felt a little off to have an Iron Man movie where you didn't see S.H.I.E.L.D. And the Extremis thing, that's another thing a lot of people had a problem with. Again, I'm not really that familiar with Extremis. As far as I could tell in Avengers, it just meant that he had like a liquid metal suit now, or he could create that, how he's always in the black and talking into the heads-up display in the movie? It seems like he could just go into a space in his head and just be standing around like touching screens and stuff. It was a little Matrix-y. So I know Extremis was perverted for the movie. It became kind of like a super soldier serum. And again, some people had a problem with that, but I didn't have a problem with that. You didn't have to call it Extremis. I guess you could have figured out some other name. I think they just kind of cherry-picked that because they knew it was associated with Iron Man. But it's not Extremis, not exactly. But it's kind of a neat idea. Do we, genetically engineer and build the perfect body, or do we engineer and build the perfect suit of armor to protect us? It's like, it was like technology versus genetic engineering, and I know they're both the same thing, but you know what I'm saying, like genetic engineering versus engineering, So they cherry-picked things from the Iron Man mythology and then changed them around and messed with our perceptions. I know the hardcore fans had a problem with some of these things. I didn't. I thought it was a fun movie. It was a funny movie, and I enjoyed it. Not as good as Iron Man 1, not as good as The Avengers, but better than Iron Man 2. Take that for what it's worth. Not a great movie, but a fun movie, a funny movie, and you'll enjoy yourself. We've got a few more vlogs coming up this summer, obviously. We'll be doing The Wolverine and The Man of Steel. I'm The Last Angry Geek, and this is The Comic Book Issues Vlog. See you next time.